Today, we're going to cover some basic clothing terminology. To get started, we're going to give you a couple of basic body terms to equip you for effectively communicating what you want to your tailor. Let's jump over here to my little girlfriend, and I'm going to go through 4 basic measurements. There are tons of measurements, as I'm sure you know, for different types of garments, but these 4, regardless of body type, are going to be the most important, so we want to be on the same page with where they're located. First, of course, is the neck. I've got these marked out here in black bands to give you a really good idea of exactly where we are landing on the body. I know that the neck seems very obvious, but just to be clear, right around the thickest part of your neck before you start coming down into the collarbone, that's where we want to go, kind of the middle sort of range just below the chin. Next, chest or bust is going to go straight across the nipple line and straight around the back. So these measurements right here all need to be taken directly around the body. So if your tailor or you notices that the tape is drooping as they take these measurements, really important, you want that to be a straight line, just like you can see here. Then we'll jump down to the waist. The waist is a surprisingly tricky one, and I know you've been in this scenario before. The waist is your natural waist. It is not where you wear your pants. Especially men in particular have a lot of trouble with this one because the waist can be anywhere in your mind that you wear a garment. But technically, the waist is your smallest point, again, regardless of body type. And so sometimes what I will do, if I can't necessarily see it right out the gate, is on a customer, I will feel to find where their smallest point is and take that waist measurement there. So unless otherwise noted, your natural waist, your natural smallest point, that is your waist, regardless of where you wear pants, skirts, your garment. And then finally, the hip, another really confusing one. And again, regardless of body type, this is going to be the widest part. So you're going straight across the seat, straight across the booty here, and trying to keep that line really straight, again with the tape measure, and straight across the front. So this is not necessarily at your crotch line, but it might be. This is where we have the most variation, I think, in body types, is coming from the waist and dropping down to the hip. Sometimes they will even call that your drop, the difference between your waist and your hip. And for a traditional model, let's say, the standard is 8 inches below your natural waist is your hip line. Don't really take that to heart because it's more important that you're going from your smallest circumference to your widest circumference, and that can vary a lot. The reason that I give you that measurement of a general difference of 8 inches below is if you're struggling and you're trying to get this measurement yourself and you're trying to figure out exactly where to kind of home in on, that's going to be a starting point for you to get there. But you can also feel the difference between these points yourself by putting your hands on your hips and feeling around for that smallest point, probably somewhere just under your ribs, and then moving down your hips until you can feel where that kind of fleshiest, largest circumference is there. Now, these 4 body terms are really going to give you a much better understanding of the geographic composition of yours and other bodies. Now that we've got that, let's jump to some actual garment terminology for your clothing and clear up a few things. Is this a closer shot on me?
Yes.
I'm gonna put some like in my hair, like this kind of stuff. Is this fun or is this dumb? Oh no. Okay, let's start with a really tricky one that we use a lot, but is not necessarily in common usage, and that is bodice. B-O-D-I-C-E. The bodice is going to be commonly referring to any type of top. So predominantly more feminine leaning, but it really could be used for anything that is covering the chest. So this may be the top of a dress. This may be a bodice section of a fitted shirt. But anything that's going to be roughly from about here down to maybe around the hip line or the waistline is going to be the bodice of the dress or the bodice of the garment. And that's really important because chest or bust, these terms don't quite cover what that part of the garment is. We want to really give an overall term to this area of the body and this area of the government. It's an overall term for this area of the garment. Okay, next up. I don't know what's next. This seems pretty intuitive, and maybe it is, but let's just cover it for fun. The sleeve length, right here I've got about a 3/4, you can see that. I would consider a long sleeve anything that's below the elbow, and a short sleeve anything that is above the elbow. Kind of going from there, you can talk with your tailor about where you actually see the sleeve length ending up, where you want it to be, what you envision for it. But generally speaking, up is going to be short and below that elbow is going to be long, and you can kind of figure out the details from there. Next, what is a vent? A vent can come on many different garments, but let's talk about the ones you're going to know the most commonly, which are suit jacket and a skirt, specifically a pencil skirt, let's say. The vent is going to often be either on the sides, but probably in the back. And on a suit jacket, traditionally you're going to have one vent right in the center, coming straight down the center back seam, or you're going to have two vents, maybe coming down symmetrically on either side. This is specifically around the waist and hip area to give you room to move and sit and basically not bust out of the garment. You want that fitted look, but you also want the flexibility to be able to jump into the car or stand up and have it still look sleek and smooth. The vents are going to give you that option. On a skirt, it's going to be somewhat similar because the vent is going to come somewhere around the knees. It's for the same purpose, allowing you to sit, stand, and keep the overall integrity of the garment while still having the function to literally live your everyday life. So vents are giving you freedom. They're giving you movement. And typically, again, they're going to be somewhere on the back of the garment where there is a hinge in the body, let's say, whether that's the hip or down around the knees. Say your pants are this wide, right? Like going down the leg, but you want them to be this wide. That, my friends, is a taper. So this is a really common request, especially now as we're kind of moving from a wider leg to a, not quite boot cut, but a slimmer fit, specifically on suits. What you are going to be asking for is to taper the leg of your suit pant or any pant really. Taper can also apply to dresses and skirts, but predominantly we use this term to talk about pants. We are specifically talking about the circumference of the leg, the tube of the leg as it's traveling down. So we're not talking about the waist, we're not talking about the hem, we're talking about the overall narrowing of the pant leg from thigh to knee to calf. Next up, this is a really interesting one and it can be very confusing, especially during a fitting. So let's clear up some communication here. The word is cuff, C-U-F-F. But what is a cuff? The most common thing you're gonna see a cuff on is gonna be a suit pant. So here's a great example of a suit pant with a cuff. The hem is here at the bottom of the garment, but the fabric has been essentially rolled up on itself and stitched and pressed in place. So it gives us this really cute looking little detail at the bottom. However, this is not a cuff. So this suit pant just ends right at the hem and is totally flat and plain. So, cuff, no cuff. Now, this is simply pinning. The reason I want to show you this is because when you're in a fitting, the tailor is going to flip the pants in some direction to pin them in place to show you the new length of the hem. But this is not an indication that they're going to add a cuff to the pant. This is simply just trying to pin it at a new length so that you can look in the mirror and see where it's going to end. If you're confused, just ask. I have tons of people ask me this all the time. They say, well, I like the length, but I don't want it to look like that. And what's really important for you to know is that it's not going to. Most of the time, they're just pinning it in place so that you can see what the length is going to look like, and then they're going to finish it exactly the way that it came. So if you want a cuff, you got to ask for it. And sometimes there isn't enough fabric in the garment to be able to fold it up on itself. Last example, which is not remotely similar to these, is a top with a cuff. So a jacket, a sweatshirt is a great example, or any kind of detail at the end. So this also is a cuff. This is a knit band specifically. It's stretchy and it's on the end of this really adorable stretch top. So this is what makes it confusing. Cuff and cuff. Really, anytime that there is a detail of some kind that is distinguishable from the rest of the garment, or the garment is folded up on itself, jeans, suit pants, even jackets, that is when you've got a distinct detail or a distinct cuff. The last one is a big one, and it's one of my favorites, so I'm really excited to explain this. Hem, H-E-M. Small but mighty. What does it mean? This is really hotly debated. This term I find often is used interchangeably with terms like sew or stitch to hem something. But the fact is that it is its own term and they aren't interchangeable. So it's really important that you know exactly what it is when you're asking for something. So can this garment be hemmed? Yes, but do you mean can it be taken in? Can it be sewn? Is very different than can it be shortened? That is really what we're talking about. The hem is referencing the bottom of your garment. So that can be a shirt, that can be a dress, that can be pants, that can be a jacket. It can be any garment, actually any garment. But when you are talking about the hem, you are only talking about one thing. That is the bottom. And most of the time, fabric has been built in maybe a little bit, but for the most part, when you're talking about hemming a garment, you really are talking about shortening it. Every once in a while, maybe you'll be able to lengthen it if that has been kind of predetermined in the manufacturing of the garment, but most of the time, the closest interchangeable term for hem is, can you shorten this for me? Anything other than that, you're talking about a different procedure. So now, you are gonna sound really, really smart. Okay, you've made it. Now it's time for the test. Just kidding. No, I do have a test for you. You have something sitting in your trunk right now. It's been in there for 6 months and you haven't taken it in because you don't know what to ask for. But now you do. You have been empowered. You have been educated. Go forth and get hemmed. And also leave a comment. Leave lots of comments. I definitely want more suggestions on terminology because we've all been there. What do you call it? What do you call this thing? Describe your mysteries to me, and I will try to answer them, okay? Awesome. Thank you for joining me. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and I'll see you soon.